Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. Got the whole crew in today. We got Tony Tsoukalos of BamaInsider.com. We got Tyler Waldrop. And, of course, today we got Mike Farrell of Rivals.com, kind of a roundtable of crew. We're talking Alabama over-under to keep you pumped up with content through these interesting months. But first, we got to introduce Mike Farrell. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. And this will be easy because it's Alabama, so everything's over.
No, I have before we start, I mean, everyone thinks you hate Alabama. Anything that comes out of Mike Farrell, they're like, oh, why does he hate Alabama? Can we just clear the air? What's your, you hate Alabama? Just tell us right now.
I hate everybody. I hate and like everybody the same. I don't care. So when Alabama's doing something good, then I'll talk about it when they're losing, or which is rare. It's very funny because you think the Alabama fan base would be one of the most spoiled fan bases when it comes to rankings. And when we had them number one for 8 out of 11 years, they never cheered, they never cared. And then when they drop, and then Georgia is number one, then all of a sudden we hate Alabama, and the Bama bump goes away, and now it's the Bama drop. But this is the same on every fan site there is. I mean, Texas thinks I hate them. Florida thinks I hate them. Florida State thinks I hate them. Michigan and Ohio State, they all think I hate them. I don't. I just have an honest opinion, and nobody seems to have that in this industry.
Well, no one has a thick layer of skin. I think that's just it, especially when you're talking about team rankings. So we appreciate you joining us, and how this is going to work today. I'm going to pass it off to Tyler. Tyler's going to ask the over-under questions. Tony Tsoukalos, Mike Farrell, myself, we're going to kind of chime in with our take about these over-under questions. Of course, Tyler, you're welcome to give your opinion as well. The more opinions, the better. So, Tyler, I'll turn it over to you, and we'll get it going with the Alabama over-under for the 2020 season.
Okay, great. I'll just, we'll start with the over-under for Alabama's wins in the regular season. We set that at 10.5. And Mike, I'll kind of give you a chance to either, drive everyone crazy or kind of redeem yourself. Are you over-under at 10.5 for regular season wins?
I'm over. Now, I don't have Alabama winning the national championship. Again, we're a long way away from that. The quarterback question is one of the things that, I think – they need to determine, and do they have the right guy? And, they've won national championships with game managers before, and Bryce Young could certainly come in and do what Jalen Hurts did in his freshman year. But there's also some questions on defense. But I still have the over. I look at the schedule, and the only game that I see that really, really troubles me, obviously Auburn is the Iron Bowl, and that's going to be a difficult game. But at LSU is a tough game. They've got Georgia on the schedule this year. That's also a tough game, but when it comes down to coaching in that game, I think I would side with Nick Saban there. So I'm going to say over, probably 11.
Mike, I give you the chance to kind of either really redeem yourself to the Alabama fans or kind of make them mad, and you kind of did both probably with that prediction.
I do. I always, and this is the thing about my job, I always temper everything I say. But yet I do say some outrageous stuff. But, if a kid's the number one player in the country, he's still got stuff to work on, And every time I rank a kid, I always come up with something that he needs to work on or some negative, because the first thing I'll do is if I get on the Alabama board and go, this kid's amazing, he's the greatest wide receiver I've seen in 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Then the first question will be, well, why isn't he ranked higher? So you always have to temper things. I picked Alabama to win it all last year, and they did not. And I picked Clemson the year before, which was pretty good. So, I picked Alabama before, but not this upcoming season. I think Clemson and Ohio State are the two best football teams in America.
Okay. Kyle, how do you feel? Do you, would you agree with Mike about the over?
Yeah, I'm with Mike on the over on this one. I mean, I look at this particular schedule. I'm still curious to see how this schedule exactly plays out and the season exactly plays out. But when you look at the schedule, if it does, fall, with Alabama playing a full schedule of games, I think, you look at the games against Georgia, that's obviously going to be an interesting one. But I think it doesn't go well for Georgia being they missed spring practice. They're going to have a new quarterback, as you guys talked about. A lot of question marks on the offensive side of the ball to add on to the fact that the game is at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And the fact that Nick Saban, he's done a great job against former assistant coaches. I guess where I disagree with Mike is the game at LSU. I'm not sure about LSU in terms of outscoring Alabama once again. I just don't think that they're going to have that firepower to keep up with Alabama, who should have an incredible amount of firepower this year with so many weapons returning. We talked about Mac Jones several times. Could it be Bryce Young at that point? I have no idea. But I know that Jaylen Waddle is still going to be around. I know that Devontae Smith, John Mechie, and Najee Harris, of course. So when I look at the schedule overall, I mean, and this is one thing that I actually learned from working with Tony. Tony said this a long time ago. Alabama's going to slip up somewhere on the schedule. They always do. And I don't know if that's going to be that game against Auburn. I don't know if it's going to be a late season game against Texas A&M. But whatever the case is, I definitely do see them winning over 10 games in the regular season.
Tony, do you think Alabama's going to slip up twice? If not, Kyle's probably summed it up, right? That Alabama's it's not the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see them losing back-to-back seasons, losing 2 games in the regular season for back-to-back seasons. That's never happened. You look at some of the things too. The Georgia game's tough, but it's at Alabama. And then you look at the other 2 games that are really tough. You've got LSU and Auburn. Well, Alabama's never lost consecutive games to either of those schools under Saban. So it's usually the way that works is whenever they do have that loss, they get that kind of revenge game. And so I'm not saying it's like guaranteed to happen that way, but I kind of think from a motivation standpoint, Alabama's going to be at their peak level. I think you look at that Texas A&M game that's now right before Auburn instead of earlier in the season. That could be a tricky game. Just because they're not used to that. They're not used to having a big time game like that before the Iron Bowl. But I mean, I've talked about this team. I think this offense has a chance to just really stay the same from last year, even with Tua gone. I'm really high on Mac Jones. I don't actually think he's a game manager. I think he's a potential NFL quarterback in the future. He's going to have a ton of weapons. I think this defense is going to be there's more question marks on the defense than I think some people are giving. I think this defense still has a lot of work to do, but as far as his offense, I think it can really carry the team.
I'll just stay with you. You kind of touched on Mac Jones there, and his over under is the next one. We set that at 3,300 passing yards for the season. Do you think he'll get there, Tony?
Yeah, I'm I'm dead sure on this. I think that you look at him, he averaged 293 yards per start last year, and that wasn't just starting against the Western Carolinas of the world. I mean, yeah, he did play them, but he also played against an Auburn, threw for 300 yards against them, played against Michigan, a defense that finished top 10 in pass defense, and he threw for 300 yards against them as well. So I expect him to just continue it, and that's kind of why I'm so high on Alabama, especially maybe in that Georgia game, is I think Alabama's already got an established quarterback behind center and Mac.
Mike, what are your thoughts on sort of Mac Jones? I'd be interested to, sort of see what, obviously you're not here in Tuscaloosa with the rest of us. Do you sort of see him being able to deliver on those sort of numbers, or maybe he's going to fall short?
See, I like Mac Jones, and he's one of the best kids that we've covered in recent years as far as fun. And, he's got a very good attitude, and he's, obviously shown that he could play at the SEC level. I'm going under because I just don't see – in this day and age, I don't see Alabama pulling a Georgia. And by that, I mean, I don't think you're going to see Mac Jones play that Jake Fromm role and Bryce Young play that Justin Fields role. Because I can tell you this, I mean, these kids do not want to sit. Bryce Young will transfer if he's not the guy. And I think they're going to, rotate him in there, whether it's packages or whether it's, garbage time. Or whether he wins the job or Mac Jones gets injured. So there's so many factors there that tell me it's going to be below 3,300. Now, if he plays a full 12-game schedule, obviously, and then in the SEC championship game and beyond, then he's going to put up more than that. But the Bryce Young factor has me on the under here.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting thought. I like the comparison to Georgia because obviously we saw that didn't quite work out for him. Kyle, how would you break the tie here?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to side with Mike on this one. I'm going to go with the under, and kind of a little bit of the same notion that Bryce Young is going to play some sort of role, probably a larger role. And as Mike said, if these guys don't play, they want to transfer out. And a guy as high caliber as Bryce Young, you got to keep him on board just because of the future of Alabama at the quarterback position. But the main reason I think is Alabama has a lot of mouths to feed at that running back position. I mean, you look at Najee Harris coming back. I mean, you got to keep him fed. You got Trey Sanders. There's a lot of guys in the backfield. And I think just with the offensive production, you might see Alabama tend to give the football to some of these running backs a little bit more. I always kind of revert back to one thing that Steve Sarkisian said when he took over as Alabama's offensive coordinator, in that he said that his offensive philosophy starts with the run first, and then it opens up the passing game. Mac Jones is a very capable quarterback. I agree with what Tony said earlier, that he's going to be an NFL quarterback, but he's not as dynamic as Tua Tagovailoa. That doesn't mean that he's not going to have a large season by any notion. I just think that Alabama is going to be a little bit more balanced in their approach. I think at least that's my opinion. So I'm going to go with under 3,300 yards for and that's a regular season, right? That's just a regular season we're talking about.
We're talking about the whole season in general with Mac Jones.
I mean, you look at the whole season. That might change a little bit, but I still I feel that it's going to be somewhere under that notion, just because of just like I said. I mean, so many weapons and a lot of mouths to feed, especially in that running back position.
Yeah, Kyle, I think we're kind of in the same place. I was heading into this thinking the over, but I think it depends how many games Alabama actually plays, whether it gets there.
Look, guys, I mean, here's my thought on this too. When you look at, obviously Mac's not to a level, but I think if you look at what Nick Saban's done in the past, I mean, I think it was pretty clear for a while that, Tua was the better passer than Jalen, and they still stuck with Jalen during Tua's freshman season. I think the difference between, I think Mac is going to be a better passer and more productive quarterback than Jalen was that year. So what is it going to take for Bryce Young to pass Mac? Because if he's coming in there and throwing for 300 yards a game, you really can't sit him just for the sake of sitting him. That's the thing.
And what's really changed, Tony, is the transfer portal. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, the transfer portal wasn't as relevant, even a couple years ago. Right now, these guys know that they can just transfer in, transfer out. I mean, with the NCAA even looking at endorsement deals, I mean, if these guys can get on the field sooner the better and get their names on a larger spectrum, that's going to change everything. And Nick Saban has to evolve and has to keep these mouths fed. If there's anything that's going to change Nick Saban's game plan going forward, it's going to be the NCAA transfer portal.
Yeah, and they're going to pass the rule of immediate transfer, whether it's this summer or January, but they're going to pass that rule. And everybody gets a waiver anyways, it seems. So, there's really not a lot to be lost to transfer out. Now, I'm not saying Bryce Young chose Alabama so he could transfer. But I also saw the efforts they made with Justin Fields to get him on the field at Georgia, and they were not good. They ran him a lot. They didn't let him pass. Obviously, he can pass. He had 43 touchdowns, I think, or something like that last year with 3 interceptions. So, Kirby kind of messed that up, and Nick Saban pays attention to everything. So he's going to have to get Bryce Young involved in the passing game, and not just as a package, runner. So that's the thing, the transfer portal is very important here. They're going to, if you have 2 good quarterbacks, you're going to lose one. So do you want to lose Bryce Young, who could be Justin Fields, or do you want to lose Mac Jones, who could be Jake Fromm? I mean, it's tough, but, both of them have to play this year.
Mike, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that, we set our over-under for Bryce Young pass attempts for 100 for the season. I'm going to go ahead out on a limb and guess that you would take the over there.
Yeah, because, I mean, he could be the starter. I'm not saying immediately, but he could be the starter. He is going to get the opportunity to throw, even if it's in mop-up time, and there are going to be a lot of blowout games. So, I'm telling you, Justin Fields is the message to Nick Saban. If he screws this up like Kirby did, it could really set the program back, and he's not going to. So Bryce is going to throw the ball. You got to figure that's 9 attempts a game over a 12-game season. That's a lot if you're a backup. But I also don't think he's going to be a backup all year long. And again, we're not even factoring in the injury situation, which could happen. I mean, it could always happen to a quarterback. It happened to Tua. So it's going to be over 100.
Kyle, I saw you kind of nodding along with a lot of what Mike was saying. Would you also?
Yeah, I
be on
mean,
the
it's
over?
kind of just basically what I also said. I mean, I kind of I like to look at numbers, and I think in 2017, I have it somewhere down here. Tua had 77 attempts, and that was a season where even he was, upset. And as he said, he was thinking about transferring. So I think Nick Saban, like Mike said, kind of looks at everything and pays attention to everything and knows that he's got to get Bryce Young onto the field. I also look at the schedule. I mean, let's just say that the schedule does take place. All right. That's how I have to look at things. He's going to play against USC just because, it's kind of the West Coast ties. He's going to play against Georgia State. I don't know how that Georgia game is going to go. He's going to play against Kent State, Arkansas, Mississippi State. There's so many games that, I mean, UT Martin, he's probably going to start that game. And so you got to, and he could potentially be the starter by the end of the season. So I definitely think he's going to have more than 100 attempts this coming season.
Tony, I know you're high on Mac Jones. Does that mean that you're on the under for Bryce Young?
Yeah, I'm under because I just don't see. I mean, look, you mentioned, Kyle, the 77 pass attempts. That was, that was Tua and Jalen. I think it's easy to say that they're going to put in Bryce Young, and they're going to try to when they're, have a lead. That's what we've seen from Saban in the past. But, if you're neck and neck with LSU and Max, putting up numbers, let's say you're in a shootout with a big team in your fourth quarter, you're not just going to put in the backup quarterback. So if you have games where there's blowouts, I think they'll blow out USC. I think they'll blow out some of the early people they play. I think they'll go with Bryce. But unless Max struggles in the big games, Bryce won't necessarily have a lot of pass attempts in those games because, I mean, you're not just going to make a sub to keep someone happy. As much as you want to keep Bryce Young happy, and I think that they will, and I agree that they'll use him a lot. I think in some of these close games, you just got to go with the winner, and I think you have to have one quarterback. And so unless Mac Jones loses the job or underperforms, I kind of see him getting a similar share to what we've seen in the past. And I just don't see him slipping up like a lot of people do. Like I said, we've seen him perform against top level competition. So I kind of think that, yes, Bryce might not be as happy with the pass attempts. I think he's still going to get his opportunities, but 100 is still a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But Tony, I'd say you're alone on this one. I would definitely take the over. Tua, when Tua had 77, it's hard to remember now, but he wasn't actually even competing with Jalen. He was a pure backup for pretty much that entire season. And I think Bryce Young and Mac Jones is absolutely going to be a competition. So
I think Bryce Young will be a pure backup. I think he'll be the most talented backup in the nation, but he'll be a backup.
I think there's different personalities that come in here, though, as well. Tua is sort of a laid-back kid and, an intense family. Bryce Young is a laid-back kid with an intense family, and there's going to be pressure on Nick Saban. When he flipped from USC to Alabama, it wasn't, come here and sit behind Mac Jones. There were promises, I'm sure, that were made or at least insinuated that he's going to play. So if he's not playing, they risk losing him. And again, this type of situation, I mean, it's not easy. People think getting 5 stars every year is easy, but look at Clemson. They obviously, Trevor Lawrence was the guy, and he is the guy, but Hunter Johnson gone, they just. Fromm was a 5-star. Fields was a 5-star. Jacob Eason was a 5-star. Now their quarterback situation is relying on a transfer, and their quarterback room beyond that is very weak. And they put themselves in that position with a choice of, running Fields around and putting them in bad situations. So, again, Nick Saban's smarter than all of us. Maybe he can figure it out. Maybe he'll speak to young Bryce Young and say, listen, this is not your year, but next year is. But that kid's going to play.
Yeah. I think we would all probably agree Nick Saban's probably a lot smarter than all of us here. Kyle, I want to ask you, moving on to our next topic, we set the over-under for Najee Harris at 1,215 rushing yards next season. That would make him Alabama's all-time leading rusher. Do you think he'll get there?
That's a tough one for me. I mean, I might be on almost like a push type of category. I mean, I look back to what he did last season, 1,200 yards. But I also kind of, I look at the other running backs on the team. I mean, Trey Sanders, I mean, I know he's a guy who certainly has to play. They like to sprinkle in Kellen Robinson. They got some young freshmen on the roster as well. And how healthy do you want to keep Najee Harris? I guess it's depending on the season. Najee Harris could probably rush for, 1,700, 2,000 yards if they really needed him to. I think he's was one of the best running backs in college football towards the end of last year. If he comes in, I still can't believe that he's even returning for this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to choose, I guess I'll go over. It's gonna be tight, but I mean, Najee Harris coming back, I mean, is a complete beast. I mean, I've been following him, for a long time. Came in as a 5-star, done everything that we expected Najee Harris to do and more. And him coming back to Alabama, I mean, is just an incredible asset for this team. But also, there's some mouths to feed, and you got to sprinkle it out a little bit depending on how the season, like we just talked about. You got to figure out the distribution with the quarterbacks. Bryce Young, Mac Jones. You got to need the running backs, and it'll be a balancing act for Steve Sarkisian. But Najee Harris going over for 1,200. I guess I'll go for over on this one.
Okay. Mike, I'm curious, if you're over under on this, and are you surprised that Najee Harris is, in the mix to be Alabama's all-time leading rusher? They've had a lot of great guys come through.
Yeah, I'm in the over here. And first of all, I'm stunned that Najee Harris didn't transfer, which, listen, I'm glad about. I'm tired of everybody just jumping into Florida the second they don't win a starting job. And he's been very patient. And this is from a kid who's from California, far from home, could have gone anywhere and played a much bigger role even, 3 years ago when he wasn't being utilized. So he came back for a reason. Now, I'm not saying he's putting up a Derrick Henry season and they're going to, put everything on his back and have them carry him to a national title. And I'm not saying he's going to win a Heisman either, because running backs just don't win those very often. But I do think he's going to rush for more than 1,215, probably catch 300 to 400 yards worth of passes as well. So I'm more in the 1,500-yard range. Trey Sanders is a tremendous talent. After that, there's a bit of a dip, when it comes to experience and guys who have actually touched and carried the ball. And I know Trey hasn't carried the ball either with the injury last year. So I think Najee's going to be the bell cow. I think he came back thinking that. And I think he's going to get 1,500 yards roughly.
Tony, we've already had this debate. I'm rolling with Mike here on the over, and I love that you said 1,500 yards. That might be even a little more bullish than I am. I know for a fact Tony's under. Yeah,
well, if you look at if Bryce Young's getting 100 pass attempts, Mac Jones is throwing for 3,300 yards, something's got to give, right? I think I agree with
those are things you're saying. No. Mac Jones is not going to throw for 30.
All right. I'll stand by those. Obviously, I'm going to go under here, and I agree with Kyle that if Alabama wanted to give Najee Harris, he could be a Derrick Henry type back. It's just that's not really what Alabama does. I think last year, this is the argument I've made multiple times. Last year was a perfect storm for Najee Harris. He had really just Brian Robinson behind him and a bunch of young guys that weren't experienced. Now he's going to have Trey Sanders, who is, a much improved talent, in my opinion, than Brian Robinson is. They're still going to try to feed the ball some to Brian. Alabama's in the past really liked going to these 3 running back sets. So I could see Najee Harris even having a better season, maybe yards per carry, but not getting more yards than he did last year, which is kind of crazy to think because he's definitely one of the best running backs in the nation. I just don't think Alabama's just going to go totally ground and pound here. And then they're also going to change and switch up their running backs enough that I don't see him getting as many carries as he did last year. And unless Alabama, and part of him coming back was that they promised him some kind of thing where he could have an opportunity to break this record. That also doesn't seem like something that Alabama would do either.
No, they wouldn't do that. And again, promises are promises. I mean, you can lie to Bryce Young all you want. You can lie to Najee Harris all you want. My thing is there is no Tua. Mac Jones is not an elite passer. Bryce Young, I know you love Mac Jones, but to me, he's the typical Alabama quarterback pre-Tua, and pre-Tua, running backs were putting up some pretty good numbers at Alabama. I don't think this is a Derrick Henry situation at all. They're not going to wear this guy out. They're not going to take all the tread off his tires for the NFL, and he doesn't want that. It is going to be a running back by committee to some extent. But if you're going to rely on, in my opinion, a true freshman quarterback in a lot of situations, you're going to rely on the running game to get him broken in and to open up the passing game for him. So I think Najee is going to be used as that guy, as just sort of, we know what we have in Najee Harris. We don't know what we have in Bryce Young, and we don't really know what we have in Mac Jones yet. But we know we've got a great running back, so let's start utilizing that.
So good to hear after all these arguments Tony and I have had about Najee Harris. Kyle, the next guy we want to talk about is, I think you feel about Jaylen Waddle the same way Tony feels about Mac Jones. But do you really think he can score 2 special teams touchdowns next year? Because we set the over/under at 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, this is the easiest one. When I got the list and I was looking over it, yeah, of course. I mean, over 2 touchdowns for Jaylen Waddle, the most dynamic and electric player in all of college football. Yeah, absolutely. I think, even though he doesn't return kicks per se, I mean, when Alabama really needed him to in crunch time, they put Jaylen Waddle back there to return kicks. He returned a kick for a touchdown. He returned a punt for a touchdown as well against LSU. This is a guy who rises up in big time games. Jaylen Waddle, I mean, everything you want in a slot type receiver, in a special teams player. I think he's one of the most. He reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson, but I think he's a little bit better in that fold. I just think he's got a lot of power. He's got a lot of speed, and certainly over 2 special teams touchdowns. I think that's an easy slam dunk for me. So yes.
I just want to point out how Kyle's entire facial expression changes when he's talking about Jaylen Waddle.
I talk about him all day. Yeah, that's my next video feature, Jaylen Waddle.
Mike, how do you feel about Waddle? 2 special teams touchdowns is still a lot.
Yeah, no, I got the under here, and I'll tell you why. Jaylen Waddle, I think, is going to be the first wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft next year, and that's saying something with guys like, Devonta Smith on the same team, and Jamar Chase and some of the other amazing wide receivers around the country. But he's a special talent. He's fast. He's shifty. He's reliable. He's got a good catch radius for a guy who's not huge. They used him last year sparingly in special teams as a return guy because they had 18,000 receivers who were amazing. So if Jaylen Waddle got his head taken off returning a punt, we got Henry Ruggs and we got Jerry Jeudy and we got Devonta. So, it's all right. We'll put your head back on and you'll get back out there next year. This year, if Jaylen Waddle gets hurt returning a punt or a kickoff, they're in trouble because their depth at receiver is not nearly as good as it was, and they're going to rely on these 2 guys. So I'm not sure he's going to get as many chances back there because I don't think Saban wants to get him killed. That's why I'm going the under. Mm-hmm. And even if he was returning every kickoff return and punt return, it's hard to do 2 back-to-back years. So I'm going the under because of how hard it is, but also I think he was more expendable last year.
Tony, you've been the odd man out for most of the day, but you get to break the tie here. You going over or under?
Yeah, I'm going with Mike, but it's not because of the fact that he's not going to get the opportunities, because I think he's too dynamic to not put him back there. I don't think other teams are going to kick to him. Why would they? Every time you kick to Jaylen Waddle, it seems like he makes you pay for it. If I'm another team and if he's on kickoffs, I'm kicking it deep or Pooch kicking it, and if he's on punts, I'm definitely punting it out of bounds. It's just, I mean, you saw the game against LSU where he returned that touchdown, kind of breathed some life back into an Alabama team that was just dead at the moment. I just don't see why you'd kick to him at all. So I'm going with under just because I feel like other teams are smart.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm going to take the under as well. I hope you don't replace me tomorrow for going against.
No. I just think, I mean, you look at like almost like some of these early season games, Georgia State, Kent State, Arkansas. I mean, there's got to be at least a possession in the first quarter, right, where they go 3 and out, and they put Jaylen Waddle back there to return and punt, and he kind of makes a highlight reel. I just think he's too dynamic to keep off the field. He's a guy who wants to return punts, like that's his MO. I would feel, along with being a dynamic receiver. So I'm taking 2. We'll see how it goes, fellas.
One thing in Kyle's favor, if you look at his average, he's basically scoring every 7 returns. So theoretically, if that holds up at all, you know, he just needs like 14 returns, which I think everyone would kind of agree he probably gets.
Probably gets that, yeah. But 2, I mean, 1 every 7 is just
Mhm.
ridiculous. So, I mean, keeping that up is going to be tough. But listen, he's a great player. Um, 2 is hard. I mean, it's just, and the
Mhm.
other thing about it is, the way life works as a special teams return guy, if you fumble 1 punt, you're done. I mean, they're going to go to someone else. And it's not like Alabama has a roster full of slow, awful football players. There's other guys that can run and return as well. So, he's shifty, dynamic, first wide receiver in the next year's draft, I think. But, two's a lot.
Mike, you keep mentioning the draft next year in relation to Jaylen Waddle. We set the over-under for, 4.5 for Alabama. Alabama only got 4 this year, and I think a lot of people thought 5 was in play. Can Alabama get over the hump next year and actually get to 5, or is that just kind of this wall?
See, this is the problem I have with Alabama fans. Can they get over the hump and get 5 in the first round? Oh, my God, what a horrible, horrible year this was. We didn't get 5 in the first round. I mean, you want to talk about spoiled. No, they're not going to get 5 in the first round, and I'll tell you why. Because a couple of those are wide receivers, and the chances of 2 wide receivers going in the first round, again, are very, 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 very rare, especially when they're not different type of wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy was a great route runner, set people up, has the size to play outside, whereas Ruggs is a speed guy who blew up the combine and is a slot guy. Devontae and Jalen are similar receivers. And they're both, tremendous athletes. But I think, Devonta Smith is a guy that could probably slip out of round 1 into round 2. Leatherwood will probably be a first rounder. Dylan Moses, maybe, depends on how he comes back. Najee Harris, likely, except nobody takes running backs in the first round anymore. And on you go. So there's a ton of roster talent there, but 5 with 2 of them being wide receivers. I mean, I think the last time 2 wide receivers were taken in the first round prior to this year was well over a decade ago. Wow. It just doesn't happen that often.
I think it was 2007. And LSU and Ohio State, I think, did it in the same year. But yeah, it's been a long time since the school had 2 wide receivers.
Really rare.
Tony, you did the story for the site the other day, kind of projecting to next year's draft. Did you settle on the over or under here for Alabama?
I'm on 4 as well, and you just look at it's really hard to have more than 4. I actually do have both receivers making it, but it's tough with guys like I think Dylan Moses ends up as a first rounder. But and then so my 4 were the 2 receivers, Pat Surtain and Dylan Moses. But Mike hit it too with how is Dylan going to come back from his injury? Is that going to be a red flag whenever the draft comes up? Will Pat Surtain be consistent enough? I know a lot of people have him in early top 10s, but he hasn't really been consistent. We've seen guys like Xavier McKinney, who has been solid, slip out of the first round. So that could happen. I mean, obviously barring the inevitable Mac Jones being a top 10 pick, I see it at 4. I see it, the 4 I mentioned with both receivers, Dylan Moses and Pat Surtain. I think that's a good 4.
So you got Mac Jones and Kyle Trask both in the top 10, I would imagine, because Florida fans think Kyle Trask is going to be a top 10 draft pick overall first rounder as well. So.
Hey, there's a sleeper possibility that Mac Jones could be the 3rd quarterback taken. I'm gonna stand on that hill until I die.
And let's not forget Jamie Newman's gonna be a first rounder as well. So
I don't buy that one.
That's a lot of first rounders in the SEC. If Mac Jones turns into a first rounder, it would be similar to Joe Burrow. I mean, you're talking about a kid who's a solid high school quarterback, accurate, arm is okay, not great. Can make passes into tight windows, makes the mistake here and there, sometimes thinks his arm is a little better than it is and tries to fit it in where it shouldn't be. And then to go, as a backup, now Mac obviously didn't transfer, but as a backup to 2 dynamic quarterbacks and then end up in the top 10 of the draft, that's a Joe Burrow story. We don't have many Joe Burrow stories out there, but maybe Alabama will be the team that has the Joe Burrow story 2 wide receivers 2 years in a row. I think Surtain is a first rounder, and I think Leatherwood is as well, and one of the wide receivers. And then if you get Najee at the end of the first round, but Travis Etienne's there as well. So it's going to be interesting. But I love the Mac Jones thing. I just do. I'm not crapping on Mac Jones, but man, Burrow was Burrow, and Mac would have to have a Burrow-like season to go that high. So.
I don't think he's a top 10 pick, but I do think he has a chance to be the third quarterback taken. So whatever that stands.
Well, we got Fields and Lawrence or one.
I think after that it's a crapshoot. I think you could put Mac Jones with any of those guys.
And North Dakota State kid, I'm telling you, everybody's going to fall in love with him. They're going to do this Carson Wentz thing. He's going to be average in the NFL, whether it's injuries or something else. Everybody wants to be the smart guy, and they want to find someone that no one else likes. And Jordan Love is a great example, Now, listen, I didn't think Mahomes would be what Mahomes is. I thought they were crazy trading up to 10 and then saying, we want Mahomes over Deshaun Watson. I thought that was the dumbest thing ever. Worked out. So what do I know? But there's going to be that small school guy, as always, in there. And Mac is going to get dinged like Tua did, for having so much talent around him. Let's say he has a great year. Well, you had Najee Harris in the backfield. You had all-American offensive line. You had 2 first-round wide receivers. The system thing's going to hit him like crazy too. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I got him as a 4th or 5th rounder, but again, I've also got Bryce Young possibly winning the job. So that would push Mac out of the draft entirely. But it's fun to debate this stuff. I mean, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. Kyle, my takeaway from everything Mike just said is when we tease this on Twitter, we say Mike compares Mac Jones to Joe Burrow. And that's how I think it should go.
That's called clickbait.
Hey, I wrote a story on the site this week. He is studying Joe Burrow for pocket escapability. So it's already in the works, guys.
Everybody's studying Joe Burrow because it's the greatest year I've ever seen of a quarterback. I still was waiting all last season for Joe Burrow to become Joe Burrow from last year and suck. And I'm like, okay, it's finally going to be the Clemson game. And then he just was unconscious. And in the beginning, he got rattled a little bit, knocked around. I'm like, okay, now we're going to see Burrow. He was flawless the entire season. So if a quarterback is not watching Joe Burrow's film from last year as an example of what to do in college, then they're an absolute idiot. And Mac Jones, as we know, is definitely not an idiot. He's one of the smartest kids you're ever going to run into. So, listen, I love Mac Jones. He's really a nice kid. He still follows me on Twitter. It's amazing. Because all these kids, after they get their rankings and they're too low, they'll just unfollow and get upset. Mac is he's a kid that you could just sort of joke around with. And he gave us a lot of great intel on other kids throughout the process. And he could have transferred. Everything about Mac Jones you root for. There's that Bryce Young problem.
Yeah. Kyle, to get back to the first round question, Tony and Mike, obviously they hate Alabama. How do you feel? Are you think Alabama's actually going to get 5 guys in, or are you in on the hate?
No, I mean, if we want to just talk about Mac Jones the whole time, that's fine with me. I love talking about the quarterbacks and how it could spin out. And I could talk about that all day long as well. In terms of Alabama having 5 guys in the draft, I think it's unrealistic when you look at next year. It'll be close, obviously. When I'm looking at this, and I had time to look at this thoroughly while you guys were talking about the love fest for Joe Burrow and Mac Jones, but Jaylen Waddle, certainly. Dylan Moses, I think Dylan Moses is certainly a first-round draft pick. I mean, I think if he has a strong season this year and you really get to talk to Dylan Moses and you realize how high his IQ is, just the overall intelligence of a player like that combined with his athleticism, he's absolutely a first-round pick. Alex Leatherwood, I would say as well. And then you have kind of the 2 questionables. You have Najee Harris and Devontae Smith. And then I guess you throw in Mac Jones depending on what type of season he is. Not saying that he's going to be a first-round pick, but, kind of that 2nd or 3rd round type guy. So I'm going to say under with Jaylen Waddle, Moses, and Patrick Surtain, and like Tony said, Patrick Surtain really has to have an outstanding year. But I think the thing with Patrick Surtain that NFL teams are going to like, that he's very dynamic and he can probably play a variety of positions just because he's a bigger type corner. If he can get a little bit faster and become a true playmaker this coming season, I think Patrick Surtain will certainly fly off the board in the first round.
I agree with you. It's a really good cornerback year next year in the draft. And Surtain and Sean Wade and some of those other guys are definitely high on everybody's list there. It's not a good linebacker year. It's Micah Parsons and Dylan Moses, and then there's a big drop-off. Now, a Patrick Queen will emerge. A Dylan Brooks will be found. I'm Jordan Brooks, sorry. But linebacker-wise, Moses is probably the biggest question mark thing, because I don't know if Devonta Smith is a first-round player. He's a great college player, and he's going to be a fine NFL player, but I don't know how he's going to test. I don't know how he's going to, we know Waddle's going to test well. So it's going to be very interesting, but these are first world problems. I'm going to jump on the Rutgers site after this and see what they have to say about their draft woes.
Yeah.
Or Florida State.
Smith is like a Jefferson comparison in that term. So he's a guy that, I could think could go around that part of the draft.
Kyle, that's
Florida
pretty.
State
That's
one draft pick.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's a low blow for Florida State. They're actually on hard times.
Yeah,
No, that's why I had to say that. Yeah.
Mike, I'll let you get us started with the next one. We said it at basically the question is, will Alabama have a top 5 recruiting class? Because the over under kind of gets confusing. So just you think Alabama's top 5?
Yeah, they will. Right now, I think they're, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think they're going slow on purpose and they're turning kids away. And they're not turning away 5 stars. Nobody does that. I think they're assessing this year to see how the calendar is going to shake out. I don't think they're panicking like a lot of schools are. They're just grabbing kids up when they can. I think they also know this is going to be a record year for decommitments. So when they're sitting at 3 commitments and way down in the team rankings, and people like to screenshot that, put it up and laugh all you want, but they're going to be in the top 5. Ohio State could finish first. And we haven't had a Northern team finish first in recruiting ever, at least in Rivals history. So that could happen. This is a amazing Ohio State class, and they're recruiting so well nationally. It's ridiculous. You have to assume Georgia's going to be in there. You have to assume Clemson's going to be in there. Then you get into, will LSU or Alabama or someone else from the SEC, because it's not going to be a Pac-12 team. It's not going to be a Big 12 team, and there will be no other Big 10 team in the top 5. So it's going to be 4 SEC and Ohio State. And if Alabama finishes below 4th in the SEC, I guess I should just quit, because then I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, they got to finish top 4 in the SEC.
Yeah, Kyle, what would you sort of say about that? Do you think Alabama's going to be top 5 as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, looking at the rankings right now, I mean, just like Mike said, I mean, Ohio State has 17 commitments right now. Clemson has 9, Georgia has 7, LSU has 7. Those are the teams that I put in the bullet points. It's April. We're going into May. There's so many decommitments. I have this whole list of, what prospects like to do that are going to their senior year. They like to announce their top 12, then their top 10, then their top 8, then their top 4, then their top 2, and then they commit, and then they change their commitment, and then they recommit, and then they announce which all-star game. So it's this whole lineup of where we're at. So, it's April. I'm still confident that Nick Saban and his staff have a confident game plan for this recruiting class. It's a slow start. I think, a lot of the COVID situation has, slowed it down in terms of them having guys on campus, because that's usually when they get a couple more guys during the spring football period. But, I don't think, talking with Andrew Bone and talking about recruiting, I don't think there's any time to panic. I know 3 commitments. I mean, it like Mike said, I mean, it's a fun thing to screenshot to see Alabama way down in the rankings, but I think they'll have a big surge, and nothing's official until signing day. So until we get to November and December, that's when you can really start to kind of really make predictions about where Alabama is going to fall in the Rivals team rankings.
Yeah, I think Alabama was 7th in 2018, and then you have to go all the way back to 2007 to find Alabama outside the top 5. So I'd agree, top 5. Tony, are you going to make it unanimous for us?
Yeah, I think so too. Look, we just talked about all the first rounders that Alabama could be losing, and the notable stars that they could be losing off the team. Recruits are going to see that too, and want to be in that next wave of, Alabama stars. There should be openings at several positions that could be key. So yeah, I definitely see star players realizing that. And look, you never bet against Alabama in recruiting. So at top 5, they might not have the number 1 class, but I think top 5 should be, definitely within reach.
Tony, I'll just stay with you for this is our last over under, and this is maybe the biggest one. Nick Saban coaching years left. And so basically if you say 4 or less, you're under, 5 you're over, because we said it at 4.5. Tony, how do you see it?
I think any other coach I'd go under, but Nick Saban's kind of like just an anomaly that he's just he breaks so many trends. I don't want to bet against Nick Saban. I just don't see him wanting to quit. I think he's going to be one of these guys that just like dies in the job. I'm just saying, like, he could be going, I'm not saying he's going to die soon. I'm just saying, he's going to be there forever. And it just doesn't seem like he stopped. There's had so many opportunities to stop, hasn't stopped. If there's going to be anything that stops him, it's, his grandkids. And, he just had, a grandson the other day. That being said, I still think he goes, at least 5 years. So that would be on the over.
Kyle, I'll save Mike for last. How do you kind of see this one? Do you think he's doing 5 more years?
Yeah, I think he's doing many more years. I think you look at a coach like Nick Saban. This is the guy is built to coach football. That's all he knows. And if you just watch his interviews, he's like, if he has an off day, he goes to church, and then he's asked Miss Terry, he's like, what the hell else are we gonna do? This is a guy who wants to compete at the highest level, very competitive. Him being in Tuscaloosa, it's a slow-paced college town where he can still see his family. Hop right over to the university. Alabama is a great setup. They're building the Saban Center here in Tuscaloosa, which is a big investment for the youth here in Tuscaloosa, and wants to be involved in that. I think he's totally bought in and just staying in Tuscaloosa as long as he can physically coach. He's in great shape and so sharp mentally, and I certainly think he's going to do that. I think he's probably going to add on, in various roles, working with ESPN as his career ends. We've started to see that, and I've alluded to that. You have, I don't know what it's called, coaching with Nick Saban or something like that. And I do think he needs to up his showmanship, because I watched a couple of those videos and it was great breaking them down, but I think he could have a little bit more pep in the step. But yeah, I think Nick Saban will certainly coach, for many, many more years here at Alabama.
Okay. Mike, this is the one everybody's going to remember you for.
Yeah, he's going to be there, for as long as he wants. We all know that. So does Nick Saban want to coach 5 more years? Absolutely. Yes, he does. He doesn't look like a coach that's aging. He doesn't act like it. He's as smart as a whip, and he still recruits as actively as anybody. He's a horrible broadcaster. So
yeah.
He'll make money doing that, but he's just awful doing that. So I think coaching is in his veins, and some people, everybody's hoping. Everybody who's not an Alabama fan is hoping that he's gone. They want him gone, but he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And the NFL has no lure for him. He has nothing to prove there, even though he didn't do well with the Dolphins. But who cares? He's got a legacy at Alabama. He's going to win multiple national championships over the next many years, and I think he'll be there for easily 5 more years.
Okay, wow. I'm surprised no one took the under. For the record, I might have said the under and just said 4 years. I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. I don't think anyone's going to have a clue when Saban steps down. So I kind of think it's going to hit us. But maybe y'all are kind of changing my mind. I wasn't really sold on that. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know. Kyle, how did you sort of want to wrap this up today?
Yeah. I'll take it from here. I hope everyone had a good time, watching the content. We appreciate you being here, not only on BamaInsider.com, but also on our YouTube channel. So be sure and hit the thumbs up button and like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member of our loyalty club member. You can find out more information right here in the description box. Mike Farrell, you can follow him on Twitter if you want the truth. So be sure, and all those truth seekers, go follow Mike Farrell on social media. He also has a Facebook page. If you want the Alabama team content, follow our team writer, Tony Zukalis, and Tyler Waldrip. And, of course, my name is Kyle Henderson, BamaInsider.com. And, of course, you know who brings you the recruiting nuggets, Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. Have a good rest of your week, everyone. We're pushing through on Wednesday. Find all the content back at BamaInsider.com, member of Rivals.com. We'll catch you guys soon. Thanks for joining us.